Chapter 1: The House on Blackthorn Lane. The decrepit mansion loomed at the end of Blackthorn Lane, its dark windows like lifeless eyes staring into the endless fog. For decades, the townsfolk whispered about its cursed history. No one dared approach, not even children playing on dares. But when Eleanor Grayson inherited the house from a distant, estranged relative, she found herself drawn to it. Eleanor was a writer of crime novels, used to delving into the darkest recesses of human nature. But standing before the rusted iron gates, she felt a peculiar unease crawl over her skin, as though the house itself disapproved of her arrival. The doors creaked in protest as Eleanor pushed them open. Inside, the air was thick with damp and decay. Faded wallpaper clung desperately to the walls, and the floorboards groaned under her weight. But amidst the gloom, one thing stood out, a massive painting hanging above the fireplace. It was a portrait of a man, his face obscured by shadows, but his eyes, a piercing, malevolent glare, seemed to follow her every move. Beneath the portrait, a brass plaque read, "Jonathan Blackthorn, 1832. Eleanor couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't alone. Chapter 2: Whispers in the Dark. The first night passed in uneasy silence. Eleanor set up a makeshift bed in the living room, too unnerved to explore the upper floors. As the wind howled outside, the house seemed to creak and groan in reply, like a living, breathing entity. In the dead of night, Eleanor woke to a sound, a faint whisper. It wasn't the wind, it was unmistakably human. She sat up, clutching the flashlight she'd kept by her side. "Who's there?" she called, her voice trembling. The whisper came again, closer this time. It was a low, raspy voice, as though someone were speaking through a mouthful of earth. "Leave, while you can." The beam of her flashlight darted around the room, landing finally on the portrait of Jonathan Blackthorn. The eyes seemed brighter now, almost alive. Eleanor's pulse raced as she realized the whisper seemed to emanate from the painting itself. The air grew colder, and the smell of rot filled her nostrils. Heart pounding, she bolted from the room and locked herself in the kitchen until morning. Chapter 3: The Forgotten Journal. Determined to unravel the mystery of the house, Eleanor began exploring the upper floors in daylight. Dusty furniture and cobweb chandeliers filled the rooms, but one discovery stopped her in her tracks, a leather-bound journal tucked beneath the floorboards in the study. It belonged to Jonathan Blackthorn himself. The entries painted a picture of a man obsessed with power and immortality. He described rituals, sacrifices, and a pact with something he called the Watcher. His final entry sent a chill down Eleanor's spine. "The Watcher promised me eternity, but its price grows heavier. It watches me even now, from the shadows, from the painting. I can feel it clawing at my soul." Suddenly, the room felt suffocating. Eleanor looked up to see the faint outline of a shadowy figure reflected in the cracked mirror above the desk. But when she turned, the room was empty. Chapter 4: The Eyes That See. That night, the whispers returned, louder and more insistent. Eleanor could no longer deny it. Something was trying to communicate with her. The whispers led her back to the painting. As she approached, the air around her grew colder. The eyes in the painting glowed faintly, and the voice spoke again, more distinct than before. "Release me." Eleanor's hands trembled as she reached out to touch the painting. The moment her fingers brushed the canvas, a shock of icy pain shot through her arm. The room blurred, and she found herself standing in a dark, endless void. Before her stood Jonathan Blackthorn, his face pale and twisted in agony. "You must destroy it," he rasped. "The painting is a prison. The Watcher trapped me here, and it will trap you too." Eleanor's vision snapped back to reality, and she stumbled away from the painting, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Chapter 5: The Burning of Blackthorn House. Eleanor knew what she had to do. Armed with kerosene and a box of matches, she prepared to destroy the painting. As she doused it with fuel, the house seemed to roar in protest. The whispers became screams, and the walls trembled. The moment she struck the match, the portrait's eyes flared with an unholy light. A shadowy figure began to emerge from the canvas, its form writhing and unnatural. Eleanor hurled the match onto the painting, and flames erupted, consuming the canvas and the figure within. The house shrieked, its walls cracking and splintering as the fire spread. Eleanor barely escaped, watching from the safety of the road as Blackthorn House collapsed into an inferno. As the flames died down, a strange peace settled over the lane. The whispers were gone, the oppressive weight lifted. But Eleanor couldn't shake the feeling that something had escaped. In the ashes of the house, untouched by the fire, lay the brass plaque from the painting. It bore a single word, newly etched. Watcher. And so, Blackthorn Lane was silent once more, but the story of the Watcher was far from over.